X-Men Unlimited issue 2. This is kind of what I call an interlude for Fatal Attractions, because last issue with Uncanny X-Men, we saw Magneto kind of become unhinged at what you call the funeral of Ilyana Rasputin and the betrayal of Colossus, and there was just a whole lot going on. So I like that they took a minute to kind of let you go. And this book really delves into, what do you call it, Magneto, and why, kind of like why he is the way he is, and why he is so many different enigmas wrapped up in. So the writer was Fabian Nikizia, the penciler was Jan Brasima, I believe is how you pronounce that. Inkers were Dan Pananosian, Keith Williams, Jimmy Palanomi, Joe Rubenstein. The colorist was Marie Evans, letterer Richard Starkings. Then there's everyone else that worked on the book. So a lot of big names on point blank. It takes place in the past with this lovely 90s vertical splash page. And of course, I love how they draw your eye, how all the other, like the tank here in the sky, everything kind of has that flashback sort of, what's that word called? Monochromatic color. But Magneto is more, his reds pop to make him stand out as the threat. When I first saw him, it was like looking directly to the sun at high noon, simply overwhelming in his brilliance, domineering in his superiority, prostrating in his arrogance. He was everything I was led to believe he would be. Magneto, one of the most powerful mutants on the face of the planet, espouser of the dominant rights of Homo superiors over normal humans, and he was more. He was cold, cynical, methodical, none of which I expected from a man whose psyche profile indicated an aversion to the military mindset. Yet there we were, soldiers in the East German army being buffeted about like toys. That's a great way to introduce the villain of the book. And so we know from Magneto's history that he hates the Germans, and with good reason for what happened during World War II. We end up, because the Germans here are trying to take over Wundagore Mountain. And that place is special to him, as we all know. If not, spoiler alert, pause this video, go check out Magneto's history and come back, and you're back. Wundagore Mountain is where Magda fled from Magneto in her fear of his power. And that is where she birthed Pietro and Wanda Maximoff under, I always forget the cow's name. Yeah, it's not Bertha, it's not Betsy, but the one that the high evolutionary raised up from a cow to human status, and she helped Magda until Magda died. And she helped raise the twins until they were old enough to strike out on their own. But Magda is buried at Wundagore Mountain, so this place is special to Magneto. And so what happens is he tells the Germans that they are not going to take his land. It wasn't an order we had to think about twice. What possesses a man so, I thought then. As Ute and I fled the scene of the carnage, I wonder what made Wundagore Mountain worthy of Magneto's attentions. I asked Ute where he was going, but he, panicking, ran blindly through the heavy woods. He didn't answer. Where were we, I asked. He didn't know. He had reached a clearing in the forest. We had come upon a small cabin. Could this be the madman's home? Ute asked desperately. I knew that no one as superior as Magneto could live in such a hovel, and when I saw it, I knew who did live there. So we see her. That creature did. And again, I cannot remember her name, but Ute. So the other guy's name is Adrian, I believe is his name. He says, Ute muttered something about a tombstone. I'm not sure what. I was watching the cowwoman flee into the darkness. I was looking with detached curiosity as the leaves and branches above my head whipped to and fro. I was watching the monster from hell calmly alight on the snow-swept ground. I was staring at my own impending death with an almost bemused indifference. You have disturbed my wife's eternal sleep, he said with a voice now choking in contained fury. Have you no respect? Uti threw his arms up, surrendering immediately. A part of me was furious with him. The rest, ashamedly grateful that he was. And not I, who so quickly gave in to the fear which swept through both of us. Magneto looked at us through those eyes. They were beyond inhuman. They were drowning pools devoid of reason of hope. He bellowed, surrender yourself? Isn't that what my family did? What my wife did? what I did time and again, surrender myself to your tender mercies, only to have that thrown back into my face through the pain, misery, and death your kindness inflicted upon me and mine. Ute exploded. There was no other way to describe it. His entire body simply ruptured. And so essentially, this story is Adrian's story. He wants revenge on Magneto for the death of his brother. And so he comes to America to try to get into all the, what do you call it? Connect to people that know him so he can begin to know the man inside out. And what I like is how we start. We're at the Empire State University, and they're going over Magneto. And of course, the speaker is Gabrielle Haller, which, if you guys don't know who that is, she is the mother of Legion and one of the many lovers of Professor Xavier. And David Haller is Professor X's son. And so, who better to go over Magnus than someone who knew him intimately as a friend? He goes, Demagogues of the 20th Century, a weekly seminar series, a topic I said to say with far too many examples to cite, as it's evident from our roster of previous guest speakers. The man we are here today to discuss is unique in his own right, a man we know precious little about, with the official record having precious little to say. We believe the man who would become Magneto was born Eric Magnus Lynchier, to a gypsy family of Semitic descent, outside Gansdyk, Poland, then known as Danzig, around 1928. So, even though, I will say this, even though X-Men Apocalypse kind of shit the bed, I do appreciate that they did draw a lot of what made Magneto the way he is from this comic, losing his daughter, his wife, etc., so forth. So they go over the concentration camp at Auschwitz, and she goes, and that's where I met, because she says, where is it? In his misery and his loneliness, he went to Israel. To save his own soul, he chose to work with survivors of the camps, and in turn help them regain theirs. And that is where I met him, for I was a patient at that hospital in Afia, Israel. Lynchier had taken to call himself Magnus, as if by choosing his middle name he could bring some semblance of balance and simplicity to his haunted life. Magnus helped nurse me back, and for the most part I can separate the Magnus the man from Magneto the mutant crusader. And please note I chose my words, for I have valid reasons to label Magneto crusader and not dictator. Firstly, he has no country to call his own. Secondly, he has fought for a specific cause, not for personal power. Which begs the question then. Before he died in a battle above Earth, was Magneto a demagogue or an ideologue? Was he a tyrannical madman, placing himself above the rights of humanity, or a righteous zealot fighting for a noble cause, equality for mutants? Can any one of us truly answer such a question? So after everything that we've seen with the acolytes, Magneto, Cortez, it really starts to make you ask questions. And that's what any type of literature film should do, is to throw questions at you and make you seek out answers, not to completely change your mind, but make you think, what's going on here? And so we see that Adrian here, he's flying to America. He's actually reading, what's funny is the book that's written about mutants and men, specifically Magneto, is called Fatal Attraction. So I like that little Easter egg. But he sees a man on the plane that has long gray hair. And he's saying, I have a weapon. Just get to him. Precise, a needle, concealed in a pen, analytical, needle, tipped. And so he runs at this guy with the long hair and he goes, Magnus! And he goes, oh, my mistake. I thought you were someone else. So we just see how deep his hatred, his fire raging inside him, as they rage inside of me, as they rage through my brother, and as they cleanse and purify all that is wrong with mutants. And so he comes to meet with Gabrielle Haller, saying, he wants to help stop Magneto. But she goes, I'm starting to see that. He says, I will assist you if your goal is to apprehend Magnus for the specific purpose of putting him on trial for his actions, and thereby granting him the forum through which he can once again express his views. If your fool's mission is to kill Magnus, then this conversation is over. So even though he's lying, you can see what's actually burning inside his head. And then what's cool is, okay, we're just thinking we're following this guy Adrian through the whole book, which is a great tell. But we also get a little nods to Exodus once again recruiting mutants. And we get to see where this new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants is, which at the time was Blob, Toad, Pyro, and then this girl, what the hell is her name? Fantasia. So they're hiding out on a boat. Exodus says Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, Mortimer Tomby, known as the Toad, Frederick Dukes the Blob, and St. John Aldrich, Pyro, and Aline Harshaw, Fantasia, thank you for this meeting. I am called Exodus. I am the ferryman assigned to take mutants on their journey to a better place. Oh, I'm just sure you are, my good man. So Toad starts to mock because he was the one that received the most hurt and betrayal from Magneto. And what happens is they're all thinking that they're all going to be brought to Avalon. But the only one that's chosen is Fantasia. And they're like, that arrogant, self-righteous pig, all my life he's belittled me with his conceit. Why aren't we all worthy of this His Highness's keeping? Because there's simply no place in Avalon for mutants like yourself and Frederick, people who lack vision and potential. Well, what about me then? I got 20/20 here. You might have been considered St. John had you not become tainted. So you just kind of, wow, okay, that's interesting considering that Duke and all them have always followed Magneto, but again, you can always see how they've always had their own personal ambitions. So you're again thinking, does Magneto really care about mutants? And this whole tainted thing, has he really built up his ego that much? Now, as the story goes on, he meets with Moira, and they start to concoct a plan on how to take him. Adrian says he wants to be the trigger man, and so they've built this device that is supposed to apprehend Magneto, everything built from plastic, of course. Now I'm going to ruin the end because it's interesting. It makes you think. We talked about the beginning what happened with Adrian's brother Ute, right? So they're thinking, how are we going to get Magneto? He's already, because this takes place right around the time of the last issue where Magneto has ascended back to Avalon. But Ute realizes that there's a place, a quiet place that he is going to go. So we get this quiet moment where we see him at the grave. Agda. Adrian says point blank, for all the pain you've caused, all the misery, all the anguish and the fear, for my brother Ute, my brother you so callously killed. So we start to see him shake because this is the moment. He goes, my brother, who did not know what he was doing when he fell over your wife's grave, who didn't listen when you asked us to leave this very private place you held so dear, who did not care when you told him that this was not a place for violence and never would be, who so stupidly drew his gun, spitting out words of hatred, rage, of prejudice, who fired at you with a murderous rage, point blank, right at your head, who was caught in the backlash as you simply gestured to protect yourself in a magnetic cocoon, who died when his own bullet ricocheted and pierced his thick skull, who forced you to break a vow of honor to honor the memory of your wife, who maybe, just maybe, might have been ultimately responsible in some small way for setting you upon the course of your life. Ute, my brother, a simple, stupid man, not a simple symbol for a cause, but a frightened lamb who sought to strike back to the wolf who was doing what it was meant to do, being what it was meant to be, not a monster, not a villain, not less than a human, but more. Or he denies himself a human life in order to make the lives of others save for pain and hardship that they have suffered. He is more than me, more than all of us. He drops the weapon. He says nothing. He knows he was just a weakness away from dying. My weakness. I'm aware I was just an act of compassion away from being killed. His act of compassion. I live because of an act of inhumanity on the part of the creature I have called. Now there's more to it. I don't want to spoil it because what he says at the end is very profound. But this, we go back to the beginning. Let's kind of just go over how time affects the memory. So when they fled that word, to Wundagore Mountain, all we saw was his brother standing at the tombstone and surrendered himself. He put his hands up, and Adrian even said at this time, as he threw his arms up, surrendering immediately, a part of me was furious with him. The rest of me is ashamed and grateful that he did. But Magneto, full of his rage, just blew his brother apart. But now, some teen years later, he's remembering it as his brother reacted, pulling a gun on Magneto. I didn't catch that the first time I went through this, and I was like, wait, it's so funny how as time marches on, and depending on the memory, whether good or full of rage, how certain things start to change. Especially how Adrian is starting to read all the ways that Magneto is trying to protect the mutant race. And it's just interesting how he replays this memory in his head. But it also shows that Magnus does, in a sense, there's a part of humanity left in him, even though he doesn't want to accept it. So just a great read, y'all. I mean, it's just a moment to kind of cool down from what happened in Uncanny X-Men, and a great character piece, just to see all the different ways Magnus is viewed through the lens of different people, and then Adrian being kind of like the focal point because he's seeing him first through this lens of hate and rage and revenge. But then as he starts to hear all the different points of like Moira, Robert Kelly, Gabrielle Haller, it's like his mind starts to build different ways that he remembers what happened at Wolverine. So guys, X-Men Unlimited issue 2. It's kind of a long read and it's a little dry, but overall great writing. Anytime I see Fabian Nicieza on an X-Men book, I know I'm going to have a great time. The artwork was great. Everything about this book was awesome. Just make sure, though, that when you read it, you have a moment where you're comfortable, you have something like coffee to drink, and just relax and not try to speed through it, because then you're going to miss those little nuanced parts. So if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop or wherever there's like to get your action figures and comics, and grab this series along with the entire Fatal Attractions. If you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little Avalon bell, next subscribe. That way as I continue to upload content, you guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with you on hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.